just introducing our series. This is our new series where we just launched Mental Health at Work, our 30 minutes focus on mental health at work. This is our second one in the series. For those of you who don't know me, which I think everyone here does, my name is Dr. Alessandria Polizzi. I am the CEO of Verdant Consulting. We focus on supporting organizations in creating thriving workplaces. And Jackie Johnston is joining me for a conversation about creating sustainable psychological safety. So Jackie, would you mind introducing yourself to the group?
Hi, welcome everyone. Thanks for spending some time with us. My name is Jackie Johnston, and I am a consultant at my firm, The Talent Vantage, and an affiliate partner with Verdant Consulting. And hi there, Clara. Good to see you. So my background is really in regards, it began in higher education and workforce development and vocational rehabilitation. And so I had a unique lens on OSHA and workplace safety and job analyses from one lens, and then workforce development from an academics lens. And then I went into business and industry, so into an HR lens. And so this whole conversation about psychosocial safety in the workplace really blends in a really harmonistic way to what I do.
Yes, I'm so excited for us to chat. And everyone, we're going to keep it super casual. You know, we're all friends here on a Friday, just talking about mental health at work. And so, oh, I think that might actually be, I think I just put someone for my next meeting in the meeting. Okay. So we'll have an open dialogue about creating sustainable psychological safety. And I'm so excited we're going to talk about this today because I was sharing with Jackie, I was literally on a call earlier today where a gentleman was talking about a program he rolled out in a very large multinational company and how fantastic it was and how it went really well. And it sounded great. And then my question was, and then what happened when you were done? And I know we're laughing because that's it kind of doesn't matter how the initial piece goes. It matters what happens when you're done, right? And so you guys are all experts in this area. Why does that matter from your point of view?
Well, good morning, everyone. Yesterday, Ted and I were talking about the wraparound, right? Of once you have a training or a program, then like how do you internalize everything that the organization has learned, that the group has learned? And so, you know, I am the evangelist of coaching, and so for me is, you know, what are those programs or supports that you're putting in place to make sure that we're living and breathing, you know, this new culture that we want to create for psychological safety, right? That we are constantly working on overcoming the biases that keep us from allowing other people to be human, essentially. And so, you know, I'm an advocate of coaching. And so, like, are there coaches in place making sure that, you know, we are all internalizing what we've learned? Those are my two cents.
That's a great way to think about the wraparound. I love that concept of the wraparound, right? So it's the event is the middle, but it's the beginning and then the ongoing piece. And coaching is a great way to create sustainability. Jackie, what are some thoughts you have on how to create sustainability on these efforts?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and I appreciate having coaches and evangelists and advocates on the call for certain. Wraparound, yes, and right. So I think of it from a learning standpoint about literacy. So we speak to the environmental changes and workplace changes with technology. So digital literacy became language that we needed to become attuned to. I liken that now to mental health literacy. And the more we can become educated about what mental health looks like, sounds like, feels like, we become increasingly aware, and which then helps embed and recognize through the coaching and training and workshops and all the things that organizations bring in, but with a common language, and then ideally some tools, right, to be able to mitigate, redirect, or refer out.
I love that common language. Ted, I see you unmuted.
Yeah, I think I so agree with everything we're talking about. And Claire and I had this great conversation around that wraparound. Um, I think often what we do is we try to put what is an organizational or even a societal problem on the individual. So, as an organization, doing the right things, putting forward the classes and all the things that Jackie was just talking about, but those are events, and goes much further than an event. And what we often do is we say, the conditions for you to be whole and safe and all those kind of things are not there. So we're going to teach you how to do it for yourself. And that's really good, but we need to surround them with all the other conditions that make it possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, this is where I start. This is where the World Health Organization starts, is with have you looked at the organizational structures and ways of working, and how those are either helping or hurting the inner workings of humans at work, and the health of the humans at work. And so, I just met with a client yesterday, and they called me because they wanted a psychological safety training, right? I think they expected me to say, here's my 1 hour in and out. And I said, absolutely no. If mental health is coming up on your diversity survey, on your engagement survey, on any kind of input, if it's being raised as an area of concern, one day, one training, just like with DEI, just like with any culture change, one little drop is not going to change the entire ocean. So we have to think about, first of all, what is causing that to get in the way? And so Jackie and I are actually working on a certification and an audit for organizations to audit those psychosocial hazards, as Jackie mentioned it, and then identify those areas of focus. So Jackie, you mentioned those. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, and I think, there's no wrong answer as long as we're continuing the conversation and asking questions, right? And so when we think about the tools and the resources then that fall primarily in the human resource realm, we're looking at the workplace policies, we're looking at job descriptions, we're looking at a universal design, and that's where that language and that training comes in to tool up the managers then to be able to recognize in their workspaces and their interactions what that means, and having an audit tool then that organizations can lean into as they're developing their strategic plans for it to become not a goal. I mean, it's a goal, but it's a way of doing business, right? It becomes a way of doing business.
Yeah, I think being more aware and conscious of what those areas are that can trip us up organizationally just gives you a clarity to be able to keep an eye out for things like that, right? So,
and it's preventative.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, that's where we need to be preventative and not reactive.
I love that.
Alan and Jackie and others, are you finding that the one shot that we talked about a moment ago is potentially making things worse for organizations?
I don't know about worse. Why do you ask the question though?
Well, I'm just kind of thinking that there are times when you can kind of let's just say you put out there a training, like the 1 hour training. I oftentimes used to get asked can you do a time management training, but can you squeeze it into a half hour, right? And then what ends up happening is you give them enough to kind of realize how bad it is, right? And how much they don't have in place. I know that's my thinking.
I think the question is, what is it they are looking to get out of it? Are they looking because they need to fill their 1 hour calendar for a lunch and learn over a 12-month series? Or are they really looking at transformation within their organization? And if so, what is that outcome going to look like, and how are they going to measure that change?
So well put.
Something.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Gabby.
Thank you. Yeah, sometimes for me it can be difficult to accept that not every client has a minimum level of awareness of what transformation is or what do they need, right? And sometimes I mean, it's difficult for me, but sometimes I also see an advantage maybe if somebody says, I want a 1 hour workshop, right? Not because I want to do the 1 hour workshop. I think all of us know that with 1 hour, I mean, nothing gets solved, like nothing. But sometimes that client is, I mean, that's what the client is willing to do for now, and sometimes it's a small space for us as consultants to go in, right? So I think it's a challenge for us how to address that, how to say, okay, I know that you want to do something, so why, like Jackie was asking, like, okay, do they want a transformation? So it's also our coaching skills also goes, in that situation to help us. Okay, so what do you want? So we start a conversation, and I think it's difficult. I think it's a challenge. It has been a challenge for me. I don't know
Yeah.
for you guys.
Here's how I think about it, is that at that point, my goal is to make the people who are attending it aware that they're not broken for having the feelings they have. So if I can, if nothing else, help them see that it is natural and expected that they experience the emotions and thoughts and that they do, that this is well proven in the science that actually not having feelings is the illness, then that's what I'm going to accomplish in that hour, and that will make a difference in the lives of the people who attend. And ultimately, the reason we work with businesses isn't because we want to change businesses. We want what we do, but we in service to helping humans have happier, healthier work lives, right? So if that's all I get is an hour, I'm focusing on the people who show up, and I'm helping them walk away feeling better and having tools to feel better and navigate the stresses that they experience in a more healthy and effective way.
And I love Ted's comment too, just in recognizing that it's twofold. So me coming in as a partner with an organization, what are my boundaries? Like, what am I wanting to get out of the other side of it from impact of the service deliveries that I provide? And the other part of it is really the whole philosophy of meeting people where they're at, right? And just that incremental change, if that's just that first step and it's the first time they've ever heard about mental health literacy or psychosocial safety and what does that mean, that's that first seed, that's that first little dial turn, because you don't know what the individuals within that room are going to take away and become catalysts for change within their organization.
Clara, I know you've had a couple.
Sure. Yeah. Just, I love what everyone is sharing, but following what Gabriella was saying, what you were saying, Al, a big part of the work that I do is educating leaders, who hire me on the components of transformative change. Like, what does that really look like? And like actually showing them a diagram of like, if these are the mental states that people are sharing, what are the power dynamics in play? What are the connections, the relationships that are there? What are the policies? What are the practices? How are the resources flowing through the organization? And so just, with a lot of compassion, really showing them that, yes, I would love to come in for an hour and awaken the consciousness, and people may leave as a result. But there's a bigger game to be played here. There's a lot more to be done, and so there's that education piece as well, kind of in that, for me as a business owner, in the sales process of when I'm being asked to provide services.
I love that. I love that, awakening the consciousness. Amazing. And so one of the things Jackie and I were talking about too before we joined the group was, how do we build on that momentum, right? We have those potential catalysts, et cetera. How do we kind of, as they say, gain purchase so that we can keep moving forward? Jackie, what are your thoughts on how you get that momentum going?
Well, if you look across the landscape right now and you read any surveys or you have any conversations with people on people operations teams, I think there's a lot of self-awareness and self-healing that needs to take place as well in order to talk about sustainability in another way. So if you have people within the organization that are leading and championing this, but their resilience or tolerance is low because their overwhelm is high, you're going to have that turnover. And so then you're going to be starting with a new leader that's going to have to develop that new relationship and that new trust, become that new champion. And so I'm also very much a proponent of that self-care and self-awareness for the person championing mental health in the workplace. And then in regards to regeneration, the concept of regeneration, right? So we're such a stop-start reactionary to external environmental changes. And we have to sometimes, right? I mean, you can't just ignore a pandemic. You can't just ignore, the economy that's increasing stress to the employees in the workplace, and all of the stressors that are going on. And that's not even speaking to what they might be having going on in their own home or their own personal lives. And so the concept of regenerating energy and momentum in people is done through people, right? So we need to have wellness be a priority for that to be sustainable.
Absolutely.
To play off that last point you made, Jackie, a couple of thoughts are kind of bouncing around for me. One is you talked about the champion, right? And how we have to help the champions take care of themselves. I believe that, the leadership is one of the primary levers that can be pulled. I think we oftentimes pull it too hard or too much or lean too hard on it, but I think it's one of the primary levers. So I want to see it go beyond the champion in order to sustain it, right? So the champion isn't having to kind of constantly, fight an uphill battle, so that it is something that the other leaders that they're with are at least showing up in a way that's with the values, even if they're not taking on as a cause because they have 50 other causes that they're taking on. So that whole idea of showing up. And then that ties to me back to the point you made earlier that I think is so powerful about meeting folks where they're at. And if that is the way a leader consistently and constantly and always shows up, then that's going to also be something that, without taking other kinds of actions, without creating programs and doing all the traditional stuff, that way of showing up actually can really permeate the conditions for it to be, sustained.
And that really is what needs to happen to infiltrate, right? And then it just becomes the way we do things, right? This is the language we use. This is how we create safe spaces. This is how we open meetings. This is how we define and facilitate our onboarding so we can welcome people into this environment of workplace wellness and psychosocial safety in the workplace.
I love those practical tactics too, Jackie, of think about all the places where we show up, to use Ted's time, in how we interview people, in how we onboard people, in how we
market our company,
how we talk about career growth, what we highlight, what we reward, what behaviors we instill, what we teach people how to navigate. Well, I want to go back to something you said, which is, and it's, yes, all the moments, those moments of truth, right? One of the recent studies, I've seen two come out actually this week, about executive burnout and executive mental health. So one study from last year showed that 78% of VPs and above have symptoms of mental health issues. So often when I share that, the response I get from people is, yep, that checks out. Which, how on earth do we think that that's okay? And then how well can people show up? Can people bring, you know, all the things we're asking them to do if they're having their own issues. So I love, Jackie, you spoke about the first thing to do is look inward to see, are you in a good place, right? And are you taking care of your needs?
Yeah, and looking inwards and having those touchstones and being in touch with your values and your purpose and your personal mission in life, and having that sense of vitality, right? And so for me in my personal journey, what the term high performer, for example, I'll go back to my story in a minute here, but the term high performer. So when we have a leader in a role, human resources, you've got a high performer who, you know, this leader's like, oh, thank goodness, because this person just picks up the ball and runs with it, and I've got so much on my plate, I don't have to worry about it when that high performer has it. That high performer is depending on how they feel valued and recognized and get their positive vibes that keep them going, can then lead to burnout as well if we're not recognizing that, because as a leader, I'm not aware of it myself. I am now negatively contributing to my high performer versus positively. And that is something that I think is important to be aware of. And I've had a number of situations in a very condensed amount of time in a personal situation where I had 5 family members pass away in a 3-year period right before going into a pandemic. And I worked in healthcare during that time in human resources and talent and hiring, and great community, right? But I could see the burnout, not only from human resources wanting to care and take care and do the right thing for people, but how that was impacting performance and how they could show up as well. And then just the work behaviors and practices that came into play that are set aside, right? Because you're so driven on outwardly taking care of people. And so you see this in executives, right? So they may not have paused enough. For me, I had a relocation. So my work life kind of pivoted. And so it really allowed me to reflect and say, did I grieve? How did I heal? Where am I at? What do I value? What do I want in alignment in all elements, emotional, spiritual, physical, mental, to return to a space of vitality in life?
I love how, sorry, Jackie, was there more?
No, go ahead.
And here's the thing, what we just talked about was self-reflection, organizational structure. We didn't talk about everyone having to air out their childhood trauma, right? We're not asking people to be in spaces that put them at risk of harm, right? Or re-traumatize them. Or, you know, we're not saying just go out and just air all your childhood issues and your biases.
Right.
Yeah, self-reflection and knowledge, but you know, it doesn't have to be scary.
No, and I think that that's what is uncomfortable, and part of that becoming more literate in mental health and self-awareness and self-care and self-regard and confidence and courage. How do you show up courageously, but also have a balance of, I think it was Simon Sinek earlier this week, emotional professionalism, right? So how do you create a space for psychological safety and mental health conversations and yet have a workplace accountability and performance? Because at the end of the day, businesses are in place for some type of service delivery and depend on economic systems. They have to have a financial system in place to continue to employ people, right? And so it's so interwoven. It's a network. It's not linear. It's constantly evolving and moving, which is why it has to regenerate. It's not going to go away, but it may look different. So this is where we're at with psychosocial safety practices in the workplace and mental health and workplace wellness today. It's going to look different every day moving forward.
Yeah, one can hope. that will be in a positive direction. Clara, I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I want to, for those who are watching, listening, or will be listening, right? The basics of psychological safety, right, is creating these environments where people can ask questions, make mistakes, right, with the ultimate goal of driving that if you create that kind of space, right, it drives belonging and it drives performance. But I would be remiss if I didn't mention, right, the call to show up courageously, to speak up, to create that kind of environment, right? It looks very different, right, for from the white male to the Black woman. And so bringing that sense of sensitivity, around the work that, leaders and individuals are doing internally to have that lens, right, around creating this culture, this courage culture looks very different for different folks. So I just wanted to bring that into the conversation for those that are listening.
That's fantastic. Thank you.
Yes,
If I
I
could
love
just
that,
play
Clara.
on to that. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Gabriela.
No, yes, I love that because I'm from Latin America. So it's the same, in Latin America, we have a different context. We are a different culture. And I think Jackie said something about this earlier. It's also about the culture and the context. It's not just the business context or the organizational structure. It's also where's the people coming from, like culturally, what their families, their I don't know, previous experiences, the places that they had lived before. It's there are several elements that we have to take care, see and take care. When we are doing consultancy, when we are approaching, when we are finding solutions to a problem, it's not just the person that is in front of us. It's all
It's that
the
whole
experience,
history. Yeah.
the whole history. It's so important.
Yeah.
So I really love what you said.
Yeah. And I think there's those histories bring with them unique ways in which we bring those strengths to the workplace and those perspectives, but also we carry with it some of the trauma that has happened, right? And so that can get, and if we think that we just check that at the door, that's where the mistakes come into play. Hey, I want to be careful or thoughtful to the fact that we are at 30 minutes. I know, Ted, you had something to add, which means I'm going to invite you to come back to our session next week, if you don't mind. But thanks so much, Jackie, for joining us for the conversation today. Any last thoughts as we wrap up?
I just think everybody that participated and contributed had great amplifications of the conversation. So thank you for sharing your voice and your heart, because that's what your advocate heart is telling you to do. And I always learn something and I'm reminded about something new when there's people contributing. And so I thank you for that. And for those that are listening as well, feel free to reach out if you want to continue the conversation, or if something specific comes to mind and you want to continue the conversation offline, I'm here. So you can reach me at Jackie@thetalentvantage.com.
Perfect.
Thanks
And
so
then
much.
next week we have Clara. Thanks for joining this week, Clara. So she'll be joining us for next week's session. So with that, everyone, thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.
Thank you. Good to be with you all.
Bye.